if we can be assured that a product is from a good source, where we take care of the oceans, where we take care of the fishermen, then the fun topic starts. Then we can cook with it and enjoy it and eat it.
This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. I'm John Susman. Whether you're on the end of a line, working in a processing factory, delivering fish to a chef, or cooking and serving seafood in a restaurant, there's something about seafood that sets it apart from terrestrial foods. Seafood is without doubt the most distinctive, special, and downright deliciously addictive of all the foods. It also engenders great memories and has great stories to tell. While many of us love the flavour and texture of beautifully cooked fish and seafood and realise that many nutritional benefits of eating this lean form of protein, most of us don't cook much fish ourselves at home. We might buy some salmon or ling once a fortnight and cook the same old recipe, or throw some prawns into a stir-fry every now and then. But we don't always consider fish or seafood a staple item on our shopping lists, and we don't necessarily know enough about it to really feel confident buying it or cooking it with regularity. Adding to the dilemma of handling seafood is the issue of sustainability. Nothing causes more heated debate than the issue of sustainability in seafood production. For most of us, the argument is an emotional one, because we're so far removed from fisheries practice and data collection on which sustainability is based. In addition, the increasing number of agencies involved and differences of opinion as to what actually constitutes sustainability have made the issue ever more confusing. In a world of such confusion, it's a welcome relief to come across someone who both celebrates how delicious and nutritious seafood can be, but who is also using his enthusiasm and media presence to build a deep and genuine understanding of how to enjoy seafood sustainably. Bart Ban Olphens is a Dutch chef turned fishmonger turned media celebrity turned sustainable seafood advocate.
So my name is Bart Ban Olphens, based in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. I think it all started when I finished the hotel management school in The Hague. It was around the mid-90s, 96, 97. And so after being graduated on this management school, I felt that I was not, cooking well enough. So I decided to move to Paris with a Michelin guide under my arm and trying to access any of the 3-star Michelin restaurants. So there I started, worked there for 2 years. And basically there it was where I fell in love with seafood. I was used to cook a lot with meat and veggies and making sauces. But it was in Paris that I discovered all these different species and discovered how easy basically it's to cook with. And so after Paris, I moved back to Amsterdam and started my first fishmongers. And the aim was to sell seafood, to sell fish with a story. As this is the only food product we still massively capture out of wild, I found it really interesting that behind every product there is an amazing story. So that's what I started in Amsterdam. And basically, it was because of I worked these years in Paris and discovered all these different species and cooking techniques. So I wanted to create some awareness here in Amsterdam, where we were used to only eat like some of the species, cook it, more or less always in the same way, trying to do it differently. Yeah, so that's where it all started.
Combining a love for cooking and eating seafood seems like a simple enough mission. Turning this into a commercial career as a fishmonger is a tough assignment. And although the per capita consumption of seafood in Holland is higher than in Australia, converting a staid consumer to try new and different fish species was a tough assignment for Bart.
If you would visit Amsterdam in the Netherlands, you would discover it's quite a traditional fish market. So when we want to explore new species or recipes, it often happens in the restaurants and not at home. So we are used to the maatjes. We eat a lot of maatjes, which is herring. It's going to be in season in, 10 days from now. We do a lot of fried fish, deep fried fish, battered fish. We more or less can compare our fish consumption with the UK market. So it's quite basic. It's good, but it's not very there is not a huge variety. And so when I started my fishmongers, it was more based on what people ordered in the restaurant. So, for example, scallops or monkfish or oysters or, well, these kind of species were not used to be sold at fishmongers in Amsterdam. So these were the early days, and it quite in the beginning it already started quite hopeful and successful. Until that moment that I became aware of the fact of sustainable and non-sustainable fish.
Being an early advocate for selling only sustainable seafood to a traditional seafood consumer demanded an extra level of commitment and drive from Bart. Not only was there no particular presence of sustainable seafood in his local wholesale market, but there was, like most parts of the world at the time, a limited understanding for what the concept of seafood sustainability meant.
Realizing that I did a hotel management school, that I was traveling a lot. I mean, I saved money when I was 16, 17 to eat at Bocuse and Michel Guérard and all the 3-star Michelin restaurants. So I was really into gastronomy. I was really into fish. And then I ended up in Paris. It was only in 2004 that it was for me the first time that I heard about the fact there is non-sustainable and sustainable fish. So I found that quite surprising, especially because, again, fish is the only food product we still massively capture out of wild. So why don't we take care? And it was the moment that the WWF entered my fishmongers at the early morning, and this lady told me, like, well, are you aware, or asked me, are you aware of the fact that 80% of what's on your fish counter here right now is from a non-sustainable source? And I was in shock. So the next moment I ring my fish supplier and ask him, could you please supply me sustainable fish? And his simple answer was like, all fish is sustainable. Or another supplier said, well, everything what comes out of the sea comes out of the sea. So it was really a different era compared to now. And it was just strange to become aware of it. But then, when my suppliers couldn't supply me with certified, so that was just the years after the MSC was becoming a bit more popular, I decided to travel towards these fisheries because my fish supply could supply me. So I thought I'm going to get it myself. So my first trip was to Hastings in the south of UK, where they fished for Dover sole and mackerel MSC certified. So I my decision was to get it myself, and this is where my journey started.
Building a consistent supply of sustainable seafood demands a disciplined commitment to seeking out fisheries worldwide, working with catchers from around the globe to ensure ongoing availability.
It all ended in something what I'm still doing today, so which is, almost 20 years later. But the first trip was, I rented the van and I went to Hastings and we bought Dover sole in crates and drove back to Amsterdam, which is an 8-hour drive. You need to take the tunnel under the channel and wait for the fish or go out and fish with them. So it was the worst business model ever, but it ended up also because it was also at the same time when Albert, which is the biggest retailer in the Netherlands, took out all their red listed species. So the green, the orange, the red. What is it? The wallet little paper where consumers can be aware of what's sustainable, what's non-sustainable. So Albert, the retailer, took out these species. And they took out Dover sole, and that was the moment I phoned Albert and said, "Well, I've got some MSC certified Dover sole, sustainably caught." And they say, "No, it's impossible." I said, "Well, join me." So they joined me in my van to Hastings again, and this is where the big show started. So because I got the retailer as a client next to my, at that moment, already 5 fishmongers, the business model became more interesting. So that's where the big thing started. And also the moment when I started to travel the world because I was fascinated by all these fishing communities. So I started to, fish, live, and cook with them. And that's also where my cookbooks and my TV shows started to, created awareness towards consumers in the Netherlands and Europe that we should make a right choice in terms of what species to use and what sources to use to cook seafood.
From setting up a sustainable supply chain, Bart's journey across the world of seafood now involves constant travel to fisheries across the globe, building relationships and friendships as much as supply.
Yeah, well, Hastings was an easy choice because I just listed the 16 MSC certified fisheries, and Hastings was the closest one. So that's the reason for Hastings. But then soon, when I was telling these stories into magazines and on TV, and a publisher asked me to make that traveling and cookbook. Alaska. I take you to Emonik, which is at the Yukon River. It's an amazing fishing community, 900 inhabitants. 60% of them are fishing for salmon. It's their only source of income during the whole year, 2 months a year. But they catch the most delicious, oily salmon you would ever taste. It's fantastic. But this community is amazing. I mean, you take the flight to Anchorage. The only way to get there is, by private plane, a charter plane, and it will take you in 2-3 hours to Emonik. It's so remote, but it's amazing. And the story when I came there is that they didn't get a better price than a Norwegian farm salmon, which is common here in Europe. Now they get double the price, or almost double. So through that awareness creation, I think these fishermen also got like a certain position, not only through me, also New England Seafood did a great job in the UK. Maldives. So if you go for tuna, the first MSC certified tuna fishery, pole and line, skipjack fishery, was in Maldives. So you go to another remote island. We know them from the beautiful beaches and the resorts, but there are local islands which they're amazing. What else? To Nova Scotia for lobster, to South Africa for hake, and of course to Australia. Where I did this amazing, you have amazing fish, you have amazing seafood, but I went there for prawns. And
that's right.
Yeah. I love Australia for the beautiful sources for fish and seafood, and how you treat fish is amazing too, and how to cook. Yeah, we can learn a lot from you guys. Yeah.
Bart Ban Olphens was not only one of the earliest advocates of the Marine Stewardship Council's Sustainable Seafood certification, but he's been one of its longest-serving and loudest supporters.
So it was the WWF who came into my fishmongers that day, but very soon I got in contact with the Marine Stewardship Council because, I found it important to have like a third party, independent party approving fisheries. So when I would do the book, and I was telling about sustainability, it should be a third party. And same with products, third party certifying. So from the very beginning, I remember here in the Netherlands, so the first MC certified seafood product were the fish fingers from Iglo. But the second until the 42nd product were all from my brand. Those days it was called Fishes, now it's Fishtales. But so Fishes, we got the second until the 42nd MSC certified product on the retail market here in the Netherlands. So that underlines, that I'm a big fan of the Marine Stewardship Council. Not on every single aspect. I think it's the very best existing today for wild caught seafood, and in 99% of the cases I agree with them, and sometimes we have a healthy dialogue. So and that dialogue is more related to tuna. So I believe that tuna should be caught by pole and line, one by one. That's the most selective way of fishing tuna, and I cannot agree. I mean, it's more sustainable than the huge vessels, but I cannot agree with pursing fishing on tuna, because it still contains a bycatch. But no, I'm a big fan of the Marine Stewardship Council, and I really would recommend every consumer to look out for the logo when buying wild-caught seafood.
Bart is a passionate, sustainable fishing advocate who shares his love of seafood, his knowledge of both sourcing and cooking with his catcher suppliers. He combines his knowledge and entrepreneurial skills to help the fishers improve both their catch quality and their income.
A part of our revenue goes into the Fishtales Foundation. So with our foundation, we, and it's only founded a few years ago. So our first project was Bitung in Indonesia, so not far away from here, from Australia. So it's in North Sulawesi, and it's here where there is a fishing community catching skipjack tuna by pole and line. But the moment we jumped in that project, it was not MSC certified yet, so we supported them to become MSC certified. It was, well, as you know, there are 3 pillars for the MSC. So it's the fish stocks, and they seem to be okay. The fishing technique, well, it's the most selective pole and line, but the management needed to be improved. So we improved that. But along the way, it was, and that's the second thing, and I will more emphasize on that topic these days than on the marine biology, which is the social economical part. We need to realize that well, if you only look at take a look at canned tuna, it's a $8.5 million US business, and over 90% is from a non-sustainable source in terms of marine biology. It's called by purseine. It's huge vessels. It's a huge production. But also, what we need to take into account is that most of the fishing communities are within developing countries. So first, 10 to 12% of the world population is directly related to fishing or fish farming. 90%, 90 of them are living in developing countries, and we need to take care of them. So where I'm very proud of is that with this fishery in Bitung, we didn't only get them MSC certified, but also since 6 months fair trade certified. So we believe, or I believe, if we take good care of the fishermen, they will take good care of the oceans. And so it should be a mutual thing in the future. It's marine biology and it's socioeconomic. So that's one of the projects I worked on a lot for the last years. And proud to have these products now on shelf with MSC and fair trade certified.
For many, the sustainability discussion has a singular environmental focus. Whilst this is of course an imperative, the concept of social and commercial sustainability are just as important. The fair trade movement has been a catalyst to change in the working conditions for workers in the coffee and cocoa trade for many years. Bart is now championing its role in the seafood industry.
It's not a big thing yet in seafood. And it's a process. So where I think the MSC or marine biology is a determination on facts and figures based on the amount of fish in the ocean and how to capture it, and it's a fact, it's green or it's red. And with fair trade, with socioeconomics, is more a process. So you start somewhere, and this somewhere can contain, for example, the working hours, or the amount of days at sea, or safety at sea, a salary, the freedom to express your opinion, which is very important. I mean, if you would get a contract, or an employee would get its contract, you need to have the right to have a dialogue on it, right? Or at least to get an explanation. And pregnancy. So for a woman in the factory, so it's not only based on fishing, but also on the factory there. So there are many pillars where we're working on and have improved. And for us, it all sounds very logical, the points I was just mentioning, but it's the opposite in these kind of countries. If you look at the bigger processing companies, and I'm not going to mention their names, but those are factories at sea. And it's not rare that workers are there for months in the middle of the sea, but they're not treated well. They don't get the right food. They don't get healthy food. They work for too many hours, and all for the reason that we don't want to pay the right amount for a can of tuna. And so I believe when we can create that awareness with consumers will be ready to pay well. And in your currency, different, but here it's like 10 cents or 20 cents extra for a can of tuna when we take well care for the fishermen and workers. Yeah.
Although it seems that hipster bars and restaurants have only recently discovered the beauty of preserved seafood, canned tuna is the single largest traded finished food product in the world, with a commercial value in excess of $35 billion. Bringing a sustainable and quality focus to the most industrial part of the seafood market is a David to Goliath-like challenge.
I was just telling you about my early days in Paris, so I love fresh fish. I would never have eaten a can until that moment I became aware of it. But for me, fresh fish was everything. And I mean, if you live on the coast, you have an easy access to it. But no, so where it started is my travels to the Mediterranean countries, so France and Italy and Spain and Portugal. And I saw these cans, and every now and then I tasted them, and they were okay, they were lovely, and they were good. But maybe because it were my early days too, I didn't have that budget to spend for the better brands. But it was at a certain moment in France with a lady called Marie Beffillon, and she's living in Brittany, and she owns a conserverie, which is a cannery, and a soup factory. She makes lovely soup, La Sablaise. But when I left the office, she gave me a can of sardines to take back to Amsterdam. And I said, well, thank you. I'm going to come eat this tonight with a good glass of wine. And she said, no, Bart, don't do that. I said, why not? And she said, well, just first have it in your pantry. And you turn the can upside down every 3 months. So after 3 months, you turn it again. After 3 months, like with a bottle of wine. And then you taste it after 4 years. And I thought, well, this is an amazing story. This is canned fish. There's so much more going on behind that little can than I know. And so then I dived really deep into the canned fish, and it's lovely. I mean, I wrote 2 books about it. It's a great thing. It's easy to cook with. It's, well, wherever you are, even hundreds of miles off coast, but then inland, sorry. You can consume it. It has a shelf life of over 4 years. You don't need a fridge. It's affordable. And it's already cooked for you. So you add some crunchiness, some color, some acidity, and you can create fantastic dishes with it. But it's a different mindset. So don't compare it with fresh fish because it's cooked. So if you cook a fresh fish, it's going to be the same experience as canned. So this is where it started. And and nowadays I've got a big assortment of a large extended assortment of all kind of species canned, and where we try also to create that awareness again. So with the QR code, you enter the fisheries, you know exactly where the fish has been caught, where it's processed, how it's processed, and what you can and inspiration how you can cook with it. Yeah, so but there it started. It's Marie in Brittany. That was the one who brought me into this new world.
For a global seafood journeyman like Bart, there is no such thing as a typical day. From working on a boat in Sulawesi, encouraging fishermen to sustainable practices, to presenting a TV show in London, Bart's life is one continuous wet, cold journey across the world of seafood.
Well, there are no typical days because every day is different, and it has to do, well, of course, the 2.5 years when we had this more or less of a lockdown, especially a lockdown, not be able to travel again. So, but since a few months, we are able to travel. So what I do a lot is every Monday, Tuesday, I'll be in Amsterdam. I'm with my kids then and working until 3 in the afternoon, and which will be mainly office work, doing my emails. And then from the Wednesday until the weekend, or after the weekend, it's often traveling. And it has partly to do with the commercial side. So we have Fishtales as a brand here in Europe, where we sell our canned but also fresh fish into the Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland. We will start UK soon. And we have our Fishtales brand. We have our Seatales brand, because Fishtales was already existing in the US. So Seatales, we started in the US with Seatales 2 years ago, which is going really well. So we are in 12 retailers, and my main goal or my main task is to expand the US market, and we are quite successful there. And I think in terms of sustainability and awareness with the consumer, they might be like 5 until 10 years behind of, Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland. So, my aim there is to create this revolution. Revolution might be a big word, but we aim for it in terms of the consumption of seafood from non-sustainable or non-awareness with the consumer into more sustainable and awareness with the consumer. So my books have been translated, published in the US. I do TV shows there, and we try to expand the amount of products on shelf right there. Yeah, so that's the commercial side. The commercial is more like in terms of sales and marketing. The other side is traveling. So I just came back 1.5 weeks ago from Sulawesi from our fishery, where I went fishing with them for 3 days. We'll do Alaska in 2 weeks. No, what is it? 1.5 months from now. Sorry, end of July. So we'll do Kodiak Island and Yakutat. So that will be Alaska. So it's a mix of traveling, commercial marketing, but also building the content.
For many of us who have seen the seafood supply industry change over the years, the next generation of catchers and cooks are being presented with an exciting future from the seafood industry. With a modern consumer who has a greater level of knowledge and access to information about seafood than ever before, the future promises to be not only exciting, but challenging.
Because of that, we have more knowledge what's going on, not only underwater, but also the industry. So we become more as a consumer, but also other people in the industry who would like to create a better world, is that there's much more transparency, and because of this transparency and the knowledge and the technology, we know more what's going on, how we can improve it and how we can enjoy it more. Because I think if we can be assured that a product is from a good source, where we take care of the oceans, where we take care of the fishermen, then the fun topic starts. Then we can cook with it and enjoy it and eat it and have fun with it. And I mean, fishing is fascinating. Cooking fish is fantastic. Eating fish is the most delicious thing on earth. So as soon as we know that we well organize the source, and this is what's happening more and more. And I'm following what's happening in Australia. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. And I think that's we should take a few more steps for different parts in the world, but at the end, I'm sure that after a few years from now, maybe a decade, that every single fish we eat is from a good source, and what we don't eat is not. Well, we need to make sure it increases again in terms of the health of the fish stocks. But what we eat, we can eat without a, how would I say, guilty feeling. And that's the thing. It's also how it started. Maybe often people ask me, why do you save the oceans? I said, I'm not saving the oceans. I just make sure that we can enjoy fish wherever. And therefore we need to save our oceans. And maybe one thing I want to mention is so we talk. If we speak right now, we talk in terms of sustainability and socioeconomics, more on the marine biology. But I think there is a great thing happening in your town with Josh Nyland, and where he's inspiring so many people around the globe. So what we eat right now is just this fillet, right? So, but there's so many things to eat from a fish more than just that fillet. So if we calculate the yield currently, it's 45-50% maybe what we eat out of a fish. Let's say if we can make that 60 or 70%, we catch enough fish right now to feed the world in terms of wild fish. Maybe not for the future, but there's farmed fish too, of course. There's maybe some plant-based ingredients too to get out of the sea. But I think we can get much more out of the same fish we catch than we consume today. Yeah, so from the more commercial marketing side is now America. We want to expand the brand, so we'll knock on your door soon, John, again. To see, Australia would be fun to do and interesting to do. No, so traveling also to explore more fisheries, to increase the amount of sustainable certified fisheries, fair trade. So it's. I want to make that impact. So if we would, I think we would focus on canned tuna. Not that we only would sell canned tuna, but in this market, I think it's a fish product which is most consumed in the US, in the Netherlands, in Germany, it's the second or third product. So if we can make impact on canned tuna this canned tuna revolution from non-sustainable to sustainable tuna, that might be my mission for the next 5 to 10 years, to really change that part of the world, because it's so massively, and if we can change that and we can make the impact there, we make huge steps. So that's one of the main goals for me the next years.
When I first met Bart Ban Olphens years ago, I thought it was serendipitous that although unrelated, we should share the same business name from opposite sides of the world. As I got to know him, I realised that we also shared a love of seafood, driven by a desire to see as many people enjoying how delicious a food it is, and that by telling the story of the fishes, encouraging more people to ask where their fish comes from and how it was caught and by who, we would build businesses that would celebrate seafood first and foremost. Bart Ban Olphens is an inspiration, a leader and a practical, sustainable seafood champion. He's also a great bloke to share a plate of fish, a glass of wine and a few Fishtales with. This is Fishtales, a seafood podcast. A Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Follow us on Instagram at Fishtales Seafood Podcast, or email us at fishtalespodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world every Friday on your podcast app.